with the chance of 2 large container tanks came to me on offer, is one I couldn't resist. Now my carrot tanks have grown in 6 small tanks which have served me well over the years, but the problem I have is when I come to protect them against the carrot root fly with mesh. Because I'm irregular size, I really don't have the option of putting a net to cover the lot. I've tried that in the past, including last year, and it still leaves gaps between the tanks where the insects can get through. So having 2 larger tanks would mean I'd only have to net 2, and being symmetrical in size, that would be no problem at all. But first of all, I had the hard task of moving the 6 tanks off the platform they was on already, full of soil, putting the others on, then refilling them. So come and join me. I'm started moving the tanks now to get the big balloons in. What I've got to do is actually move these 6 off to make space to put the blue in, and then I fill them up. Luckily I've got this little stacker truck, so I'm able to spin them round, move them up to the top of the plot, and then we can get the others in position. Well, there's a fair bit of weight in these. Like most things in life, having the right tools for the job is half the battle. And without this, I'd have been completely scuppered. There's a fair old bit of weight in these, but at least I've got them moved now. These 2 tanks are going to be prepared, ready to grow the carrots for the coming season. If you're familiar with the channel, you know that I had 6 smaller tanks here previously, and these have just replaced them. Quite a good depth to these. I think there's previously used on the building site for mixing cement and stuff like that. However, what I've done, after I've moved the old tanks, I've shored the bottom up, give it extra strength, because these will be quite a weight when they're built. So first of all, we'll look about filling them. There's quite a depth in these tanks, and although they've got small holes in there, that'll be ideal for what we want. Although we want drainage, we don't need to drain too quickly, and it'll help encourage the roots to go downwards. So in the bottoms first, I'm going to put a decent layer of wood chip, which will help the drainage and rot down over the next year or 2. This year on the site, the committee decided that we get horse manure delivered free and wood chip free, and there's just to show that the suppliers don't get out of pocket, because rising fuel costs and that, we decided to introduce a £5 subscription per year for each plot holder, and that then allows you to use the manure and wood chip on your plot, which I think is an absolute bargain. I did the first layer of wood chip in here. There's around about 2 inches, 5 centimetres, if that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to carry on and do the same again. Put probably about 4 or 5 inches of rotted horse manure. There's plenty of straw in the stuff up there. And once that sets in, we can then see about getting the soil from the old carrot tanks back into here to top up. I'm not sure if you'll be able to tell from here, but I'm about just over 1/3 full there, and so that's got the horse manure in. I'm going to leave that for a few days to let it settle down before I start adding the extra sieve compost from the old bins. Also, I want to do a little modification to the sides, which will make fitting the hoop lids a lot easier. So in the meantime, I'll just get another half a barra to top this one up. That's a horse manure in place now. You might think that's quite high, but that'll drop down at least 1/3, and I'll put some sieve compost on the top, and that will get topped up until I'm ready to actually start sowing carrot seeds. There is one modification I want to do, and I'm going to add rails along the length of these. And the idea of that is fix the rails wooden battens, and they'll have holes in which will actually then hold hoops, which will allow me to put the Enviro mesh on to keep the carrot root fly at bay, hopefully. But so I'm going to start and fit those rails now. For the runners on here, I'm using this C16 CLS timber, and if these containers had got square corners I'd just build a frame, but as it is they've got curved. Rather than mess around with miters, I'm just going to be putting a batten along the straight length of each side, which will then contain the hoops. So first of all we'll get these cut. I've cut the 4 battens now, them are in place on size. What I did, I added an extra bit of length to each end and put a slight chamfer on, and surprising that I added an extra at least 7-8 centimetres to each length. Now what I've done, I've spotted 4 places along there, and that there is going to be where the hoops go, so I'm going to drill one and use that as a jig to mark the others out. I've got some lengths of 22mm pipe here, and I reckon if I chop these in half it'll give us a nice size hoop for these. So let's have a look. When you're sawing anything, especially with a thin wall, try and use a saw with a very fine teeth on them, rather than that'd be far too coarse. It might even crack the pipe. I said earlier the pipe that I'm using is 22mm, so the bit I'm going to be using is 25. That'll give it a 1.5mm clearance each side of the pipe. Bear in mind the wood's going to get wet and it'll probably swell, which will reduce the hole. This should be fine. And another thing, if you're drilling through wood, try and put a piece of wood, something below it, so it rests on it. That can act as a sacrificial piece, and it greatly reduces the risk of splitting as it breaks through. The other option, of course, is to drill from both sides. Anyway, let's get these holes in. So that's the 4 holes all done through now. All I've got to do now is put the next piece of wood underneath directly, line them up, and then I'll just spot through with the drill just to put a little witness mark in. I've done that one already, you could probably see it. And then I know that each hole is identical and doesn't need to mark them out, and so I'll repeat that for the other 3 remaining pieces. There's one more thing before I fix the rails on. I'm just going to mark through these holes here onto the container to indicate where the pipes will be, and then I can drill holes underneath to actually screw and fix these battens to the container. That's where the holes are through the wooden battens, and I've just marked 5 positions along here. And there I'm going to drill through and screw from underneath. Make sure you put some decent sized washers to help stop the screws pulling through. There's the first hoop in situ. Now the temperature out here is quite cool, it's only just above freezing, and because the pipes are brittle, that's a tight curve. I think what I'm going to do, you got 2 options there. You could either put hot water inside the pipe and actually bend it that way, but I've got a little heat gun and I'm going to apply that to the centre of the pipe and actually bend it round my knee just to ease it in a little bit easier, so then it doesn't cause a fracture on the pipe, because I think given the right conditions these would snap quite easily. Oh, despite my best valiant efforts, that was a complete and utter disaster. I think the curve on this pipe is just too much for the length of it, and I tried putting hot water in, that didn't work, and then I used a heat gun starting from the edges working up, and it's when it reached the stress point in the top it just buckled like that. So I gave up, and then I had a thought. I got some MDPE, the blue water pipe in the back garden, so I got some of that out. The problem was I'd already drilled these as 25mm, and this pipe's 25mm. But fortunately this little step drill come to the rescue. I was able to pop that in, open the mouth of the hole up just by a few millimetres, and it fits like a glove. And there. So now we're back on track. Although this is fine soil in here, I'm still going to put this through the sifter before it goes into the carrot tanks. Thankfully we've had no rain for the last few days and the soil's fairly dry, so that should help it. That there is as fine as seed and cut and compost. I'm sure the carrots will love it. Steve over at Digwell Green Fingers has mentioned a couple of times on his channel, when using these rotary hand sieves, it's worth considering reversing the nuts and bolts in the inside of here. I've never bothered to do mine at all. I wish I had 2 minutes ago. What happens, the stones get stuck in there and it just jams the paddle solid and it wrenches your wrist and it hurts. So I think I'll be following that one upstairs. Originally I'd considered about building a solid hinged lid for this, but the problem I've got now is with the strawberries over there, you have to leave it in situ. I'm stuck for storage space. So in the end I decided to have these removable hoops, and then in the winter when these beds are all done I can just take the hoops out, and the idea then will be put a piece of polycarb right across the top, and that'll keep all the bad weather out and the excess rain of washing any nutrients out the soil, and also can use it as a storage because it'll be flat. One down, one to go. I'm very pleased with the way that's come out. So it is hard work, gives you an arm ache, but I could do with the trommel really, but never mind. I'm going to crack on and try and get the other one done. Finished at last. The light's starting to fade now and I'm tired. I make no secret of it, it was hard work that was, but at the end of the day hopefully it'll be worth it. This level in here will no doubt sink by the time I come to sow the carrots, but I've still got 1.5 containers of compost left, which I'll sieve some and put in a bag and keep it just to top these up. Before I finish it off, I know I'm not going to use these for the next month or two, but I just want to pop the hoops in, have a look, and I'm excited to put a bit of net on to have a look what it looks like. That's about it, I think. This is not the net that I'm going to be using for the growing season. I'll be using the ultrafine insect mesh from Easy Nets. The same one that I use over my onions, and say that does keep the carrot root fly and whatever out. But all in all, I'm quite happy with this. I just wanted to have a look after putting a good day sifting that. I wanted some reward in seeing what it looked like. So that's about it. Many thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of this, and I hope to see you again in the next one. Until then, bye for now.